After 30 days in a coma, my son shockingly gave away my home. I awoke to the incredible truth. Jack Thompson lay motionless in a hospital bed, the sterile scent of antiseptic engulfing him as if to suffocate any hint of life left within. 30 days had passed since the accident, a routine day at the shop gone tragically awry, a mishap that had turned him from a proud father and hard-working mechanic into a shell of a man. In the depths of his own mind, a storm brewed. Even if he couldn't outwardly express it, memories echoed around him, hauntingly vivid in their absence. What would happen to Linda and Ethan without him? The idea sank deep, flooding his heart with dread. Outside the sterile walls, anxiety gripped his son, Ethan. The burden of mounting medical bills pressed heavily on his young shoulders. Could he keep the family afloat? The whispers of creditors felt like shadows creeping closer, threatening to engulf their home. Jack had built a life for them from grease-stained tools and hard labor, his pride rooted in providing for his family. But now, what had he left them to manage? A wavering sense of inadequacy gnawed at Ethan, urging his heart to race with each notification on his phone, each doorbell chiming like a death knell. Finally, breach came, a desperate decision made in haste. He could no longer hold their sanctuary together. He sold their cherished home, the place where countless memories mingled with laughter. The home he remembered climbing trees in the backyard and celebrating birthdays flooded each crevice with unshakable nostalgia. His childhood vanished under the weight of necessity, and as he stood outside those now foreign windows, the sunset bathed the walls in a cruel light, mourning what once was. Even as he sacrificed everything for his father, betrayal nagged at Ethan's heart, a betrayal to the life they cherished. Meanwhile, Jack, lost in silent darkness, had no idea of the turmoil unraveling outside. Though gear shifted into nothingness, as he gradually awakened, his eyes flitted open to a world colored by confusion. The sterile surrounds were alive with flickering monitors and distant voices, but clarity evaded him. Who had moved? Who had drained their lifeblood, their roots, away? It wasn't just the shock of awakening, it was the icy realization that everything they had worked for was gone. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Jack's heartbeat quickened. Rage boiled beneath the surface, simmering with hardship and despair. "How could you do this, Ethan?" he wanted to shout. Each second felt like a betrayal by the very blood that ran in his veins, and he fought against the bounds of his own body, trembling with anguish as those tangled thoughts in his mind spiraled. The weight of sacrifice crushed him. He'd given everything, until nothing was left, and Ethan's choices felt like daggers of despair. Days in the hospital dragged on, each filled with swirling emotions that refused to settle. Jack sought slivers of strength in his boy. What resilience lurked behind that fragile facade? Dylan, cocooned in despair, faced a coming storm they both needed to navigate together. But how could he reach back and stir the embers of trust and family? As his tumultuous journey of recovery began, with it arose another unthinkable dilemma. Would he be able to forgive his son? In the depths of uncertainty, a family crisis loomed on the horizon, one that would test the very essence of their bond. Jack's heart twisted, caught in a web of fear, pain, and unconditional love. Would their journey reshape their identity, or would it unravel beneath the weight of sacrifice? Awakening brought an unsettling clarity to Jack, as fragments of fragmented memories cascaded through his mind. He recalled the warmth of Ethan's laughter, the pride swelling within him during their shared moments at the garage. Their bond was once unbreakable, yet now it felt like a mirror shattered, leaving shards of what had been. As frustrating memories emerged, they collided violently with the present. Jack's body felt foreign, heavy with tubes and wires binding him to the hospital bed. Time stretched painfully in the sterile room, each tick of the clock intensifying his sense of confinement. Feeling trapped was suffocating, yet the weight of emotions swirling inside him demanded to be reckoned with. Rage? Certainly. But there was also confusion, and on the fringes of those emotions, glimmers of concern for Ethan flickered like distant stars in the night. Christmas lights strung around the house had brought warmth. Now they felt like echoes of a life that felt almost fictitious. Jack squinted at the stark brightness of the hospital lights, craving those familiar moments out in the sun. During the silent hours, Jack's thoughts became a battleground. Could he, a father steeped in the essence of resilience, allow himself to become bitter? What would that teach Ethan? He recalled the lessons he had imparted. Those words spiraled and resonated like a major chord gone suddenly flat. Forgiveness can heal more than anger ever could, he muttered under his breath, a mantra he had once cherished as truth. But as the reverberation faded, self-doubt swiftly emerged. What if forgiveness was a naive illusion that left him vulnerable? Each passing day tested him further, as mornings turned to weeks. Reclaims of strength came in tentative waves, small victories like turning his head or grasping a nurse's hand. The physical realm of recovery seemed painfully slow, yet within him roiled a tempest of emotional turmoil that refused to settle. Try as he might, the image of Ethan's distraught face plagued him, the look of desperation etched deep into the boy's brow during their last conversation. It had been months since they'd experienced any semblance of intimacy, and Jack pondered the gravity of their connection, slipping through their fingers like sand. An opportunity emerged during a particularly quiet afternoon. As the nurse completed her rounds, Jack seized a moment, breathing through the overwhelming pressure of words. "Can I see my son?" The request felt monumental, each syllable pulling weight from the depths of his desire to heal not just his body, but their fraying relationship. As she nodded with understanding, a burst of anxiety crashed over him. What would he say? Jack had always been a planner, an architect of his own life, but this was beyond anything he had prepared for. But he remembered that critical moment in his life, the decision to let go of the past and embrace new beginnings. When the nurse returned, she accompanied Ethan into the room. Heart pounding, Jack could feel the ripple of the impending confrontation pushing his limits. Ethan's eyes met his father's, filled with confusion, grief, and an unmistakable longing for resolution. "Dad," his voice quivered. Here, within the 4 sterile walls that confined them, lay a chance for healing, if they were both willing to embrace it. The air weighed heavy with unspoken thoughts, and Jack clenched his fists, summoning every ounce of resolve. He had started this fight for a future. The time had come not merely to recuperate, but to confront the truth simmering beneath the surface. Would they sink under the weight of betrayal, or rise together from the ashes of their choices? And as the silence enveloped them, Jack understood. This moment, fraught with tension, could redefine everything. Would their decision pivot towards mend or division? Only the truth would lead them down this labyrinth of emotions. What lay ahead now had to be faced. The story of their lives hinged singularly on this encounter. As Jack took a breath, preparing to speak, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was merely the beginning of their journey, an uphill battle that might unravel even deeper truths than he'd anticipated. The silence in the room hung heavy like an unshakable cloud, threatening to rain down the weight of years spent in emotional exile. Jack's heart raced, an erratic drumbeat echoing the disarray in his mind. "Ethan," he started, the word barely conjuring the familiarity he once held sacred. His son stood uncertainly at the threshold of their shared past and an uncertain future. The boy's expression was a mixture of hope and trepidation, and suddenly Jack felt the immensity of the chasm that had formed between them since his accident. He had to acknowledge the damage, to peel back the layers that had built defensively around his heart, even as his physical body remained tethered to the bed. "I'm sorry," Jack blurted out, the admission slipping through his lips before he could process it. His vulnerability hung in the air, a raw undercurrent of honesty that felt simultaneously terrifying and liberating. Ethan's brow furrowed. "For what, Dad? You didn't do anything." Each word felt like a knife, releasing unspoken grief bubbling just beneath the surface. Watching his son grapple with the awkwardness of their situation stirred something within Jack. A flicker of determination ignited. He understood that this wasn't merely about his apology, but of rebuilding trust that had long since eroded. "I wasn't there when you needed me," Jack replied, grappling with the guilt coiling in his stomach. With every word, he tried to weave a bridge to Ethan, each exposed feeling a step toward reclaiming their lost connection. I didn't prepare for what happened to me, for us. All the times I missed activities, laughter. I should have made those memories, not just waited for them to happen." Ethan's response was steeped in silence, but that silence spoke volumes. Jack read the confusion on his son's face, the way he was caught between loyalty and the pain of abandonment. The realization struck Jack. He needed to give Ethan more than just apologies. He needed to give him courage, too. Courage to express anger, pain, even questions that felt too heavy to ask. "You have every right to be angry with me, to express whatever you feel, Ethan. I messed up, and I know I've let you down. I don't want you to feel alone." In that moment, Ethan shifted, a shadow of old hurt wavering. Jack felt a crack form in the wall separating them. This was no longer just about mourning what they had lost. It was about planting seeds for what could still bloom. "As much as I'm still here," Jack began slowly, "I want to be a father again. I want us to heal together. I can't change the past, but I want to work toward understanding, together." Each word felt heavier than the last, yet they seemed to open possibilities. For Jack, this wasn't merely about recovery, it transcended the physical realm. It was about brushing off the rust of their relationship and reclaiming the father he had always aimed to be. Ethan's eyes lifted, filled with a hesitant curiosity as he opened his mouth, but only silence emerged. Jack held his breath, weaving unspoken hopes into the air. It was a moment suspended in time, where both were teetering on the edge of something transformative, something that could pull them back from the brink. The prospect of facing their demons together, of rekindling the bond forged in warmth and trust, was daunting yet exhilarating. Yet a new wave of uncertainty crashed over Jack before he could latch onto that spark. "Dad!" Ethan's voice trembled, and in that instant he appeared both vulnerable and incredibly powerful, like a flickering flame in the darkness. "What is it, son?" Jack urged, desperate to keep the door ajar, to glimpse the possibility of revelation. Ethan's lips tightened, the intensity of his gaze holding tightly to the unspoken. Just as Jack felt that their moment was about to unfold, an alarm rang out, shattering the fragile atmosphere, a cruel reminder of reality's hold. "Ethan, wait!" Jack called out, but he felt only a sense of urgency that this exchange had placed them on a precipice. One small shift, and everything could change. What would his son reveal next? The anticipation loomed larger than Jack had prepared for. The truth of their relationship was tangled with both shadows and light, and just when clarity seemed at hand, chaos threatened to engulf it once more. Would they reclaim their love and connection, or would silence crush them again beneath its weight? The shrill sound of the alarm reverberated through the sterile hospital room, piercing the fragile cocoon of hope that surrounded Jack and Ethan. He watched helplessly as his son stepped back, the moment they had built hanging between them like a tightly coiled spring. In that instant, Jack felt a disorienting rush of frustration and dread. Why had reality insisted on intruding at this critical juncture? Jack struggled against the intrusion, his thoughts racing. Could this moment slip through his fingers again? "Ethan, please!" he called after his son, the urgency in his tone desperate and raw. But Ethan remained frozen, the weight of unspoken words anchoring him in place. In that instant, Jack realized he was not merely dependent on his voice to reach through to Ethan. He needed to harness the resolve burgeoning inside him, not just for words, but for actions. Maybe he was still confined to a hospital bed, but his commitment to change extended beyond this moment. This wasn't just about one conversation or the fear of losing his son again. It was tied deeply to discovering a renewed sense of purpose. "Ethan," Jack said again, more slowly this time, tenderly. "I know it's overwhelming, but please, just let me explain. I need you to know that I'm here. I want to fight for us." His voice softened, shifting from desperation to vulnerability, an emotional pulse reaching out in his son's direction. Ethan turned, the hesitation lingering in his expression before he took a step back towards Jack. "Fight for what?" he asked, his voice shaky but filled with an intensity that betrayed his inner turmoil. "You've been gone. I had to find a way to cope without you. What do you even have left to give?" Jack could feel the defensive walls around Ethan, solid and impenetrable. It broke his heart, yet it illuminated a pivotal realization. He needed to approach this head-on. Jack had spent so long feeling like a spectator in his own life, and now that had to change. "I understand if you're angry with me," Jack replied, his mind racing. "I'm angry with myself too. But I want to learn to be present, to listen. I want to know what parts of your life I've missed." His thoughts bent toward the future, encompassing the changes he had already begun to envision. "What hurt you? What made you resilient despite my absence? We can start by dismantling the barriers, Ethan." A flicker of surprise crossed Ethan's face, as if Jack had thrown a lifeline into turbulent waters. For the first time, he saw uncertainty bleed into curiosity and reflection. Jack could feel the charge in the air as awareness shifted to acknowledgement. Perhaps it was the first hurdle on the road to rebuilding what had been lost. But as quickly as the flicker appeared, uncertainty returned, thickening the atmosphere. "Do you think it's just that easy?" Ethan shot back, frustration blending with sorrow. "You can't just say the right things and expect everything to go back to normal. You don't get how deep this goes, Dad." Jack's heart sank again, a disquieting twist in his gut. As Ethan's words landed like an aching truth, Jack understood that restoring their relationship wouldn't be a simple endeavor. It involved digging deeper, unearthing layers of hurt that had long ago settled. But the moment an obstacle presented itself, he felt a flicker of revelation within him. "I don't have all the answers, Ethan, but I want to earn your trust. I want to prove I can do better, not just for me, but for you, for us. I've started to see this isn't just about healing my body. It's also about mending our hearts." Ethan's momentary silence explained everything else. The weight of expectation crouched before them, enveloping them in a tension that pulsed through the room. Jack felt the enormity of their confrontation crashing over them, breaking the surface of their past, a past filled with heartache and misunderstanding. At that moment, Ethan lowered his gaze, a myriad of emotions warring within him. "I don't want to feel alone anymore," he whispered. Jack felt a tremor of possibility ignite the air between them. There was no certainty, no magic promise that everything would snap back into place. But the poignant truth echoed in their shared anxiety. Amidst the ruins of their relationship lay the azure blueprints for a new beginning. As they stood on the precipice of this tentative renewal, Jack breathed deeply, gathering his thoughts. What could he do today to set things right? What step could help him navigate the complexities still veiling Ethan's heart? Just then, as if the universe had conspired for another interruption, the door creaked open. A nurse entered, clipboard in hand, reciting her routine intake without a glance of acknowledgement. Jack's chest tightened. This felt invasive and disorienting. Yet within the turmoil, he vowed silently to remain vigilant. He wouldn't allow their moment of connection to be lost. He needed to find a way to drown out the noise of the outside world and focus completely on what had just begun, a journey toward healing that could change both of their futures forever. "Ethan," Jack said softly, a unshakable resolve filling his voice, "I promise we'll talk more. But we really need to begin with your experiences, your voice. I'm here for the long haul." As the nurse's voice continued in the background, Jack felt another wave of determination swell. What had he yet to learn about himself, still hidden beneath layers of remorse and doubt? And what revelations awaited Ethan that could finally bridge the gap? The sterile smell of antiseptic filled the air, but Jack was hyper-aware of the delicate dynamic at play with Ethan. The nurse moved in and out, tending to the routine checks while Jack stared at his son, mentally kicking himself for allowing the moment to be interrupted. Yet, in the midst of this mundane care, he felt a surge of resolve strengthening his spine. Ethan's defenses were still high, and Jack sensed that the recent progress could easily evaporate into the ether. He couldn't afford that. Without a moment's hesitation, he repositioned himself slightly in bed, determined to align his focus solely on Ethan, blocking out the noise of medical instruments and murmured conversations from the staff. "Listen," Jack began, his tone firm yet gentle. "I'll take responsibility for my absence. It wasn't just physical. I emotionally checked out too, and I don't want to stay in that place. I want to change. And I want you to help me understand how to be better." Ethan's eyes narrowed slightly, analyzing Jack's vulnerability, searching for sincerity. Jack pushed back against the familiar pang of anxiety that threatened to shackle his resolve. There was rising tension in the room, their unspoken fears forming a wall between them. But Jack was determined to break it down, no matter how much it scared him. "What if I don't know how to help you?" Ethan finally said, his voice wavering but challenging. "Then let's figure it out together," Jack responded quickly, fear replaced with a sense of clarity. "I can't just keep talking about being present without actually being engaged. I need to navigate this uncharted territory with you." A flicker crossed Ethan's face, one that Jack recognized, a challenge being issued, a dare to prove his willingness to put action behind his words. "What does that even mean, Dad? You've been saying you want change, but how do I know you're serious this time?" Jack knew it was all or nothing. The stakes were crystallizing into something tangible. He took a deep breath and focused on the essence of the moment. "We start slow. Even the smallest actions count, right? This hospital offers support groups. Why not invite me to join you?" The suggestion slipped from his lips, a small yet powerful lifeline thrown into the waters of uncertainty. The idea hung between them, and Jack felt the weight of Ethan's scrutiny. Could it be that simple? Yes, it could. Taking the risk meant confronting fear head-on. It challenged Jack to be vulnerable while also investing in the healing process of their relationship. Ethan crossed his arms, visibly weighing the proposition. Jack could see hope sparking in the depths of his son's guarded expression. "I guess we could try it," Ethan finally said, reluctance lacing his words, but there was an unspoken agreement, a bridge being constructed, however shaky. Jack's heart raced, buoyed by a new resolve. "I can be there, even if my legs are weak. I'll be your student in this, and every session I'll share my thoughts, my struggles. I'll be transparent. I want you to see I'm working on myself. I want you to know that you can rely on me." As Ethan began to consider Jack's offer, something unexpected flickered in his eyes, a tentative glimmer of acceptance. Maybe they were inching toward a reconciliation after all. Jack felt a surge of gratitude mixed with anxiety. The journey was far from over. Suddenly, the nurse interrupted again, glancing at them with curiosity, as if sensing the shift in their dynamic. "All right, Ethan. I'm here to check your father's vitals, and we'll get you back for some rest," she said. But Jack noticed her gaze linger on the two of them. Instead of letting her presence shatter the fragile connection they were piecing together, Jack took advantage of it. "Ethan, I'll be waiting for your answer. Let's start this path together during the next meeting, just one step at a time." Ethan swallowed, his jaw setting with newfound determination. "All right, Dad. I can try." Just like that, a moment, small yet monumental, shifted between them. Jack felt invigorated by Ethan's willingness, an ember of hope igniting inside him. Yet, amid the brewing optimism, Jack couldn't overlook the dark clouds of their unresolved past. The nurse nodded at them, pausing momentarily before she closed the door behind her, leaving them alone once more. But the silence felt different, less like the quiet before a storm, and more like a canvas waiting to be painted. What if we both fail? Ethan pondered aloud, shadowed doubts creeping back in. Jack's gaze caught Ethan's, conviction shining through. Then we own it. We learn, we adapt, and we keep at it. This isn't about perfection. This is about growth. For now, it was a start. Fragile, maybe, but present. Jack felt the stirrings of his own growth echo within him, the thrill of stepping into the unknown. But deeper issues still loomed, waiting to be tackled head-on. As Jack mulled over the unraveling day ahead, the realization dawned. What other emotional depths lay hidden, not just in Ethan, but within himself? The intricate web of father-son dynamics was teeming with undiscovered territory, and Jack was ready to embark on this treacherous yet exhilarating journey. With a mixture of anticipation and caution, he steeled himself for the next challenge on the horizon, one that would test the foundations of their emerging relationship. What detrimental truths still lurked beneath the surface, just waiting to be released? The morning light seeped into the hospital room, casting a muted glow over the sterile environment. Jack sensed the shift, a continuation of their tenuous bridge building from the night before. Each heartbeat played like a metronome in his ears, a reminder that time was both their enemy and ally. Their conversation required not just acknowledgement, but action. Difficult, vulnerable action. With each passing moment, the urgency of their situation solidified in his mind. He was no longer just a father trying to connect with his son. He was a man who needed to take ownership of his failed past. That realization felt like a stone rolling down a mountainside. Heavy, unstoppable. "What do you want from me, Jack?" he asked himself, grappling with his own expectations. Today would not be just another day mired in the usual cycle of habitual avoidance. Jack had to dive deeper. He recalled the support groups he had suggested, their potential for resonance. No doubt they would force him to confront parts of himself that had long been buried in denial. There would be more than just discussions. There would be confrontation, the type of feedback that could cut like a knife. But it was necessary. Ethan stretched out on the bed, his fingers tapping rhythmically against the hospital sheets. Jack noted his son's body language, the nervous energy, brisk movements, a mixture of impatience and fear. Jack felt his chest tighten with the weight of their shared past. "Hey, Ethan," he started, carefully choosing his words as if crafting a delicate piece of art. "I know this isn't easy, and I just want to emphasize something. You have every right to feel uncertain about me. Our history is complicated, and I've given you reasons to doubt my intentions. I want you to understand that I need to work through my own issues too." Ethan looked up, his brow furrowing slightly. "So, you really think going to one of those support groups is going to change everything? Just like that?" His skepticism cut through Jack like ice water. "It won't change everything," Jack admitted, feeling a wash of shame at his own naivety. "But it's a start. Recognizing our failures and still choosing to engage with them? That's brave. I want to try to be better, for both of us." As Ethan pondered Jack's statement, Jack took the moment to immerse himself in reflection. What had he buried deep down within himself, in the midst of his self-loathing? The specter of his previous habits, fleeing from depth, from challenge, lurked in his mind. His thoughts turned toward how such avoidance might have impacted Ethan. Each overlooked conversation, every missed milestone became weighted with significance, each moment tangibly shaping their fractured connection. The sound of footsteps approached, grounding Jack once more. It was the nurse, bringing a routine checkup, but today felt different. Today, the simple act of performing his vitals could have ripple effects, feeding into the tension of growth. He watched as she meticulously checked the machines and looked up, meeting Jack's gaze with an inquisitive smile. "Your progress is noteworthy," she said, her voice warm, but lacking the levity Jack craved. He wanted her to understand the depth of his situation, but it felt selfish to burden her with the weight of his relationship struggles. Still, he felt an urgency to verbalize his hope. "I'm pushing for change," he said, his voice gaining strength as he spoke. "I'm working to mend a relationship with my son. I want to be better." She nodded, encouraging. "That kind of commitment can spark incredible shifts in both of you." Her affirmation felt like a jolt of electricity through his veins, compelling him to own his narrative even further. Jack turned back to Ethan, who still watched him carefully, weighing his words. "We take this day by day. If we show up and bring our truths, we might unravel something extraordinary. I want us to navigate this together." Silence enveloped them, thick with unspoken emotions, fear, hope, doubt. Jack's heart raced as he braced himself for whatever might unfold in that enduring tension. "What if you uncover something about yourself that you don't like?" Ethan's voice was soft, but the challenge in it was palpable. Jack felt a knot form in his stomach, a foreshadowing of trials yet to come. He was about to confront deep-seated fears, but today's meeting would be one of many. "Then I'll confront it head-on. After all, it's easier to hide, but standing firm is where growth occurs." As he spoke, Jack felt a flicker of determination flow through him, a stark contrast to the clouds of doubt that had once defined him. He was restless to begin this journey into discovery, yet a part of him remained apprehensive about what awaited them. Shadows were beneath the surface, and today's exploration could yield unsettling revelations. Ethan finally nodded, albeit cautiously. "Okay, Dad, I'm in. But every step has to count. No more hiding." As Jack met his son's gaze, a powerful sense of purpose ignited within him. What hidden truths lay waiting to be discovered? Each underlying truth revealed could either inspire resilience or ignite a confrontation so severe it could shatter their fragile bond. They were just beginning to scratch the surface, and already Jack could feel the intensity of the battles ahead. With his resolve weakening into uncertainty, he sensed the turbulent road they had chosen to travel would only unfold further. A relationship wrought with profound challenges, but undeniably alive. And he knew, for himself and for Ethan, that this journey was only beginning. Just as the first rays of light break through the darkness, would they find a way to illuminate the hidden crevices of their hearts? Jack sat on the edge of the hospital bed, the air thick with expectations that stretched between him and Ethan. The revelation of their past weighed heavily upon them both, yet hope flickered like a dim flame against the looming shadows. He had committed himself to honesty, a commitment that terrified him more than any physical ailment. "Let's not just talk about it," he said, buoyed by a sudden resolve. "We need to take action. When do these support groups meet?" Ethan hesitated, the conflict in him visibly mounted. Jack sensed the tension, the inner turmoil that his son's face betrayed. "I'm not sure I'm ready to sit in a room full of strangers, Dad. What if they just make things worse?" The opposition in Ethan's stance struck at Jack's core. It indicated the very barrier he aimed to dismantle, the fear of vulnerability. In that moment, he understood that their real work was not simply in attending meetings, but in fostering trust through shared discomfort. "What if we went together? Just for the first one?" Ethan's expression softened, although uncertainty lingered in his eyes. "You'd really do that?" "Absolutely," Jack affirmed, leaning closer. "We would face this together. If I fall short, or if the group doesn't resonate, then we'll find another way. You won't have to endure this alone." There was a pause, thick with silence, as Ethan considered Jack's offer. Jack fought against the urge to pretend he wasn't desperate for some sign of acceptance. The weight of his failure toward Ethan loomed over him, pressing down on every moment of their interaction. "Okay," Ethan finally said, his tone tentative but puzzled. "I'll give it a shot. but I'm not making any promises." Jack felt a rush of gratitude wash over him. They were stepping onto unknown ground, and every step would be a testament to their commitment to transparency, even if it felt fragile. Promises are just words for the moment. Let's see where actions lead us. As they began discussing logistics, each detail illuminated an aspect of their fractured bond waiting to be fortified. Jack could almost visualize the shifting ground beneath their feet, as if they were both standing on a precipice that could either lead to freedom or fatality, depending on how they moved forward. Stepping outside the hospital room that day felt monumental. The fluorescent lights buzzed above them, and Jack took in the starkness of the hallway, how its atmosphere seemed to echo his suspicion of lurking shadows. Every step radiated determination, yet doubt hummed in the air. He found his mind drifting to the future while navigating their precarious present. Would these new steps guide them to a healthier dynamic, or merely peel back scabs of unresolved pain? As thoughts bubbled within him, Jack noticed a group of individuals gathered in a waiting area, sharing quiet conversations punctuated by laughter. They appeared to be supportive friends and family. One woman reached out to a man in a gentle manner, her hand resting over his arm as if to anchor him in the present. Jack felt a sharp pang of envy. The normalcy of connection contrasted starkly with the void he felt with Ethan. "Look at them!" Ethan's voice snapped him back. "I wish we could be like that." Jack's heart sank. Was this how far they had fallen? He hadn't only abandoned Ethan, he had abandoned himself. Shifting his gaze, he looked earnestly at his son. "We can be like that. It just takes time." Ethan turned away, masking his feelings with the uninterested gaze of a teenager. The transitory flicker of resolve Jack had felt earlier wavered, weighed down by an insatiable need for his son's approval. Later that evening, as they settled into the hospital's temporary accommodations, Ethan on the bed with his phone and Jack in the chair beside him, forms of deep-seated frustration emerged. The elements of conflict ignited anew within Jack's thoughts. Was he doing this out of genuine desire to connect, or merely to alleviate his own guilt? "While we're in this hospital room, we're not just visitors," Jack declared, shaking off the doubt. "We have the ability to redefine how we interact. This is a starting point." Ethan glanced at him with a frown. "What do you mean?" "Every conversation, no matter how small, can shape the way we understand each other. Let's make this count. Let's challenge ourselves by being honest, even if it's uncomfortable." Ethan scoffed lightly. "Like that'll change anything." Jack could feel frustration bubbling beneath the surface again. It would be an uphill battle, but he also recognized that this was not a war to win. The goal was collaboration, incomplete and imperfect as it might be. It was about finding ways to weave their stark realities into something coherent, something together. When the time came for sleep, both occupied their respective beds in silence, the barrier of unspoken words lingering like heavy fog. It was only then, within the quiet of the sterile walls, that Jack felt an overwhelming sense of urgency to protect not just his relationship with Ethan, but his own identity as well. A truth whispered within him. If he was to build a bridge, he must first rediscover who he was beneath the rubble of past failures. What new perspectives awaited within the chaos of growth? Would they survive the turbulence ahead, or would the honest conversations reveal darker truths that might tear them apart? The night stretched on, but an urge to confront the storm ahead began to take root in Jack's heart. And as exhaustion pulled him into sleep, he could not help but wonder if buried truths might also lead to dreams he never thought possible. The morning sunlight trickled through the thin curtain, casting stripes of light across Jack's face. Awakening from a restless slumber, he felt the weight of the night's reflections swirling in his mind. He needed clarity to navigate the intricate emotions rolling between him and Ethan. Sitting up slowly, he abruptly recognized that the air felt different today. It was charged with potential. He glanced at Ethan, who remained asleep, his phone clutched tightly in one hand. Jack experienced a flicker of doubt. Is it truly possible to rebuild a bond that had been teetering on the precipice for so long? Fighting the impulse to retreat into despair, Jack decided it was time to act. Today would not continue the cycle of silence. It would serve as the launching pad for transformation. With careful strides, Jack exited the room to seek some coffee in the hospital cafe. The mundane sounds of bustling nurses and gibbering families struck him as dissonant. Each hurried step carried with it the vibration of a promise half fulfilled. He was one man in search of redemption with his son, yet surrounded by a sea of others, tethered by their own battles. As he sipped the bitter brew, Jack became acutely aware of his surroundings. Conversations floated toward him, some about laughter, some laced with grief, but amidst them he caught snippets that felt all too familiar. The fragility of familial ties, the daunting necessity for healing. They echoed the very discussions he and Ethan needed to have, but had yet to facilitate. Returning to Ethan's bedside, he found his son awake, scrolling through social media, seemingly oblivious to Jack's presence. Instead of slipping back into his habitual silence, Jack chose to disrupt the norm. "Hey, how are you doing?" It was a simple question, yet it opened up a realm of vulnerability he had been neglecting. Ethan lifted his head, surprise painting his features. "I'm fine," he mumbled, as if that response sufficed in a realm fraught with complexities. But Jack could see the defensive walls starting to rise once more. "Fine?" Jack echoed, allowing a light chuckle to escape. "I thought today we could try being more honest. You know, like we talked about. No more fake words." Ethan didn't respond immediately. Instead, he studied Jack's face as though trying to decipher something deeper than the words exchanged. "I don't get it," Ethan finally admitted, frustration bubbling beneath the surface. "You're just saying this to feel better. It's not like we can just erase all the junk that's happened." No mask could hide the truth, and Jack felt the sting of his son's words. "You're right," he replied quietly. "It's not about erasing anything. It's about acknowledging it together. What happened in the past doesn't define us moving forward." Ethan scoffed again, but this time there was less disdain and more contemplation in his expression. Jack sensed a crack in the wall, a moment ripe with the potential for deeper conversation. "What if we start with something small?" Jack proposed, leaning in slightly, his tone filled with sincerity. "You tell me one thing you're holding on to that you think separates us, and I'll share something in return." Ethan hesitated. The silence hummed with the weight of unspoken truths. Then slowly, he began to speak. "You were never really there when I needed you most. It felt like I had to grow up without a dad. I hated that." The words hit like a cold blast of air, forcing Jack to confront the reality he had long avoided. "I know I missed so many moments," he whispered, the admission almost a plea for understanding. "I wanted to protect you from my failures, but in doing so, I isolated myself. I forgot that we needed each other." Ethan's gaze dropped to the bedside, his internal battle visible as he processed his father's raw honesty. "It's not that easy, Dad." "Nothing worth having ever is," Jack replied, a newfound firmness in his voice. "But maybe if we keep talking, it can become easier. We owe it to ourselves to try." As the hour wore on, Jack felt the threads of connection begin to weave, fragile yet promising. A shared vulnerability opened a window, a chance to redefine their relationship. They needed to navigate this tumultuous path together, with every honest word acting as a step toward understanding. But the dynamic between them remained tense, each conversation reflecting fear and potential. Could this new foundation withstand the inevitable storms, or would it buckle under the weight of unresolved grievances? Jack felt a looming sense of urgency. More lay ahead, lurking just beneath the surface. What other revelations awaited their exploration, and could they truly achieve the depth of understanding they yearned for? Jack felt a deep vortex drawing him toward the next confrontation, a realization swelling within him. Perhaps some truths were much harder to bear than others. Jack sat across from Ethan, the sterile scent of the hospital room hanging heavy around them. The air crackled with a tense energy. Each heartbeat resonated with the promise of deeper engagement, yet the shadows of their shared past loomed large. He felt both terrified and exhilarated by the prospect of continuing their conversation. There was a burning need within him, a desire to continue unraveling the threads of miscommunication that had suffocated him for years. The silence layered between them felt thick, charged with emotional weight. For a brief moment, Jack allowed himself to reflect on how often he chose silence over confrontation in the past. He had let fear dictate his interactions with Ethan, dismissing opportunities for vulnerability. Today, he would not allow fear to overwhelm him. "Can I tell you something, Ethan?" Jack ventured, his voice steady despite the tremors of uncertainty that rode just below the surface. "Every time I wasn't there for you, it was like I was digging a deeper pit. I've spent years carrying that blame. I wish I could change it, but I can't." Ethan shifted, the intensity of Jack's confession forcing a somber expression onto his face. "Why didn't you just tell me that before? Why let me believe you didn't care?" "Because I thought protecting you from my failures was what you needed," Jack replied, his voice barely a whisper. "But in reality, it just created more distance. I failed to realize that vulnerability was our pathway to reconnect." Jack's heart raced as he braced himself for Ethan's response. He could see the conflict within his son, an internal battle that mirrored his own. "For so long I assumed that if I stayed quiet, if I just let it be, everything would be fine. But it wasn't, was it?" Jack continued, his mind swirling with the implications of that truth. "It's never fine when you pretend. I hated that you were more of a ghost than a father," Ethan finally said, his voice laced with grief. "You were supposed to protect me, to guide me. Instead, I just felt alone." Jack internalized this, grappling with the depth of his son's feelings. Was this a moment of liberation or an affirmation of his failings? "Ethan, I can't erase that pain, but I'd like to be a part of your life moving forward, if you'll have me." "What does that even mean?" Ethan retorted, a mix of skepticism and curiosity in his gaze. "You can't just say, 'Be a part of my life.' You need to show it." And therein lay the crux of Jack's internal conflict. Show it. Finding the right actions felt like scaling an insurmountable mountain. He had always been more comfortable with words than deeds, but now actions would be his greatest teachers. "I realize that words are just the beginning. Actions carry weight," he admitted. "I'm willing to take that on. I'll be here every step of the way, but I need you to guide me. What does being there look like to you?" Ethan appeared taken aback by the sincerity of Jack's inquiry. This was the first time his father had openly invited him to define their relationship. Jack's heart flickered with a newfound hope. "I just want you to be there for my moments, no matter how small," Ethan replied cautiously. "Like, if I have bad days, I want to know you'll actually show up, not just with words, but with your presence." As Jack absorbed his son's request, he realized the gravity of the commitment he was about to undertake. This was not a mere promise. It was a pact carved from shared pain and the desire for reconciliation. Each new day would require effort and a willingness to challenge his own habits. "Let me prove that I can do this," Jack replied, determination washing over him. "Let's set a day each week where we spend time together, no distractions, just us." Ethan's expression softened, the walls still present but beginning to crack. "That could work," he said slowly, contemplation transforming into tentative hope. As they forged this new plan, Jack pondered deeply on his own shortcomings. The journey was not just about navigating Ethan, but understanding how to change the patterns ingrained in him. In that moment, Jack felt a swell of possibility. He might be able to reshape not only his relationship with Ethan, but also gain a renewed sense of self. Yet unease still lingered. What other truths lay buried beneath their fragile peace? Jack sensed the quickening of his pulse. Their honest conversation was only the start. The real challenge awaited ahead, the tempest of emotions still lying dormant. But could his newfound resolve withstand the complexities of their history? And what was it about holding on to the past that kept pulling them both back, entangling them into old fears? Jack couldn't shake the feeling that the deeper they delved, the more perilous their journey would become. What pivotal moment would come next to shatter their emerging understanding? Would he be ready to confront the ghost of what had once driven them apart? Jack awoke the next morning, connected to the hum of machines and the soft rhythm of the hospital. Time had begun to feel elastic. The days crawled, but also propelled him forward into stark realities he had long avoided. As sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating the room, it served as a gentle nudge to embrace both clarity and courage. He glanced at Ethan, still asleep. Today would matter. It would be more than a day for healing. It would be a day to define themselves moving forward. Today he'd finally confront the shadows of their past, and with every intention, commit to a future rooted in honesty and vulnerability. The night before had shifted something fundamental between them. Jack felt the heavy burden of unspoken truths slowly lifting, a precursor to a deeper conversation that needed to happen. He refused to let another opportunity slip through his fingers. The resolve to redefine his role as a father pulsed through him. "Ethan," Jack said gently, his voice sliced through the silence. Slowly, Ethan stirred, his eyes blinking away the remnants of sleep, peering through layers of confusion to meet his father's gaze. "Morning," Ethan replied, his tone subdued yet questioning. Jack could sense a whirlwind of emotions beneath the surface, waiting to emerge. "This morning," Jack began, grounding himself in purpose, "I want to continue what we started yesterday." He leaned in slightly, ensuring his intentions were clear. "There's a lot we need to navigate together." Ethan shifted, the echoes of their previous conversations reflecting in his eyes. "Like, what more is there to unpack?" he asked, crossing his arms defensively. Jack took a deep breath, steeling himself for the vulnerabilities that lay ahead. "We've touched on the past, on your feelings of abandonment. But I want to look at the future, at how we can build something real." He felt a surge of courage as he spoke, the conviction throwing open the doors to uncharted territory. "What does that mean?" Ethan queried, a blend of curiosity and skepticism creasing his brow. "I want us to establish a real connection," Jack articulated, each word punctuating the profound revelations awaiting them. "Let's define what our relationship will look like. I will need to show up for you in ways that matter. We can set aside time to talk, to share experiences, and to forge a bond based on presence, not just words." Ethan hesitated, the vulnerability evident on his face. For a fleeting moment, Jack recognized the duality of emotions. Hope and hesitation twined like fractals, each layer telling a story of its own. "Are you really ready for that?" Ethan challenged. "Yes." Jack's response was firm, almost visceral. "It's vital for me to earn your trust back. A bond forged through action and reflection is where we can start. Today," he stressed, "I want to schedule our first outing together." The idea hung in the air, its execution wavering for just a moment. Then Ethan's eyes brightened, a flicker of excitement overwhelming his usual defenses. "Where do you want to go?" "Anywhere you choose," Jack offered, the enthusiasm echoing through both men. "It could be a park, a cafe, anywhere that allows us to connect, free from distractions." Ethan's expression softened further, cautious intrigue brewing in place of skepticism. This progress felt monumental. It was an acknowledgement that vulnerability was no longer a weakness to avoid, but a strength to embrace. "You really mean it?" he asked tentatively, vulnerability peeking through the armor he had worn. "Yes, I do." Jack's voice was steady and reassuring. "This is not just a token gesture, my son. I am committed to showing up for you and learning how to be the father you need, but it's going to take effort, on both our parts." Ethan nodded, the reality of their journey settling heavily yet positively in the air. As they began to plan their first outing, Jack felt an unexpected surge of optimism and fulfillment. The road ahead would be paved with both challenges and victories. But knowing they were venturing forward together revitalized Jack's spirit. A couple of hours later, they made their way out of the hospital. The sun bathed them in warmth. They walked side by side, Jack hyper-alert, navigating their surroundings, while also acutely aware of the weight of this shared experience. With laughter and playful banter surfacing in the wake of conversation, Jack felt each moment solidify their bond. For the first time, in what felt like an eternity, he could sense real hope cascading through their dialogue, and he reveled at the prospect that this could be the turning point in their relationship, a new chapter filled with promise. As they took their seats at a nearby cafe, sipping steaming cups of coffee, Jack looked at Ethan with a fullness in his heart he hadn't felt in years. Finally, he allowed himself to take stock of how far they had come and the mountains yet to climb. It was exhilarating, terrifying, but above all, it was doable. "You know, we can get through this together," Jack said earnestly, feeling both grounded and uplifted by their newfound interplay of trust. Ethan smiled, signaling a shift he had long been waiting for, the first signs of his readiness to navigate their complicated past and build something meaningful for their future. And as they forged ahead, Jack recognized with unwavering clarity that this journey had only begun. It would be filled with lasting commitment, patience, and love, a father and son reclaiming their relationship, confronting fears, but above all, embracing the masterpiece of their shared lives. Change had taken root, and Jack had not only found a purpose, but had also taken the first concrete steps toward becoming the father he aspired to be. This was the moment he had fought for, not just for Ethan, but for himself as well. As they continued their conversation, a wave of elation blossomed within Jack. He felt accomplished, not just in forging forward with his son, but in discovering the pathways of growth within himself. Their journey was not just about reconstructing the past. It was about building a legacy of authenticity, presence, and resilience together. Now was a time of transformation, and Jack was no longer afraid to embrace it. You need to subscribe now to witness the next emotional story of overcoming personal struggles. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and support content that motivates change and growth. Comment your thoughts and emotions about this journey. They matter. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformative ending. Don't wait even one more second to spread the message of healing and reconnection.